Hi, everyone. My name is Sam Golgun, and I'm the founder, president, and CEO for World Music Development. And I'm here today with Jamie Duffy and Stefan Brackett with Youth on Record. How are you guys today?
Doing great. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. I'm going to just dive in. Jamie, I wanted to ask you if you could tell us a little bit about Youth on Record, your history, your vision, and your mission.
Sure. And thanks again for having us. I'm excited to do this interview with Stefan Brackett, who's one of our co-founders. So yeah, a little bit of history and what we are all about at Youth on Record. So we are an organization that is working to ensure that an entire generation of young people are more free and more able to have agency over their lives, their finances, their art, and their communities. So what that really looks like is at Youth on Record, we're 11 years old. We employ professional local musicians as educators and mentors for young people. So we are definitely an organization that's driving a creative economy, teaching artists how to reach and teach some of our most vulnerable young people. We're an anti-racist organization that uses music as a tool for liberating a young person. So we do that in high school classes, we do it in out of school time programs, we work with youth ages 11 all the way up to 24 years old. So really trying to see them through the various stages of their life. We were founded by members of the Denver, Colorado band Flowbot, of which Stefan is an actual Flowbot. And we were founded by him and his bandmates. So I would love for Stefan to talk a little bit about why Youth on Record, why what was called flowbots.org. I will say that we reach about 1,400 young people annually, again, through our programs that are both inside the schools, so kids get high school credit and middle school credit for our classes, and then the out of school time wraparound programs that really support their economic development and artistic development. But Stefan, can you share a little bit about what the seed of this was and why you all founded it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think a lot of bands, when they stay in the city where they're from, they end up having a lot of connections to their actual home place. When we got signed and we had these record deals and such, and everybody was saying that you should move, we just decided, I don't think we should. And one of the main reasons was that we felt like we had actually benefited from a whole bunch of investment in us that had happened in our city of Denver. Almost every member of our band went to Denver Public High Schools, went through Denver Public music programs, and those programs didn't exist, and they don't exist now like they did for us. So in many of the ways, we're like, well, there was a lot of investment that was put into us as band members, and we need to pay this forward. So some of these things that we're not seeing, well, how do we contribute to making up for that gap? And so when we created the nonprofit organization, the band itself has always been about justice. It's always been about equity. It's always been about inclusion. But also we found a real limitation to just singing about it and not creating a pathway for other people to find their own way through it. So we created a nonprofit organization, honestly, with just like the good intention of trying to create those pathways with having no real idea how to do it. We were musicians. We weren't necessarily like social engineers. We weren't executive directors. But because we were so connected to our city, we were able to find people like Jamie Duffy who helped us make our vision real and then exceed that vision. So like the original impulse of what was flowbots.org that became Youth on Record is still there in the seed of the organization. It's only that its implementation has been made more rigorous and it's gone even further outward. We had a hope of just living our lyrics for ourselves and our fans with flowbots.org. What we have with Youth on Record now is a true way to holistically liberate all parties involved, from the teachers who are musicians to the students who are musicians. They just don't know it yet. And that kind of holistic rising of all ships is pretty much kind of like the basis of what this whole organization has been about.
Great. That's fantastic. A fantastic story. And, I love, again, using that power of music basically for making a difference. And it seems like that's where this all started. So, Stefan, let me ask you then, can you talk to us a little bit about the work Youth on Record has done and that you're involved with currently, and some of the programming that you guys are doing and offering to the community?
Yes, absolutely. So, Youth on Record, when we started, as I told you before, it was a band with a lot of good intentions without a lot of process. Where we are now is we found out that if we are trying to actually liberate our students, and by liberation, we mean not just empowerment, but like a holistic ability to be able to see the factors that work against them and be able to give them technologies and care in a consistent fashion that allow them to help them like change and author their own circumstances. So in order for that to happen, like we had to kind of stumble our way through to the point where it's like, no, we can't just do this after school. We can't do this once a week. It can't be like a club. It needs to be something sustained in order to create an actual continuous experience of care in order to try to combat the trauma or lies about potential or any of these other factors that are like so prominent in our young people's lives, especially now. So what ended up happening is that we came upon a model. It's like we need to be in school. We need to be a part of it so that we can actually comment and affect the school itself. It's one thing to create a pocket reality. It's another thing to create a pocket reality within a situation that might also be contributing to the trauma or the school to prison pipeline and helping to interrupt it at the source. So with Youth on Record, we have, and Jamie, you'll have to help me with this because I always forget the numbers because we just got into the new school year. So how many schools are we in right now, Jamie? It's
we have 10 partner schools currently in 3 school districts.
Yes. And so like all of those programs are like during the school day, or in this case, during the school day, but remotely because of COVID. And it's consistent throughout the school year. And as I told you before, the main reason for that is like that's the only way that you can actually create a long-lasting or at least impactful change. And yeah, it's been amazing after several years of being in the schools during the school day to be able to see the real change that happens. Like the main data point is students coming to class, even in this circumstance, and excited about it. I think that means that we're giving them content that's actually helping liberate them, that's giving them real tools to help them navigate this situation, and is also letting them be in contact with adults who care about them, and is actually creating a situation for them to express their joy, even in this circumstance. All of those are like primary data points for us. And we found in general, like after doing these programs for years, yes, when we talk to our partners, we talk about graduation rates, we talk about attendance. But for us, that's the low bar if you're really showing up for your students. The high bar is they're able to see themselves as powerful, as actors and agents in their own lives. And if you do that, the grades, the attendance, the disciplinary meetings, all those things, like those will go down, the grades and all these other things will come up. Because if you put this kind of first, you get to see a revolutionary thing happen when you prioritize your children's liberation.
Yeah. And I'll say to that too, if I could, that our job as a nonprofit community organization is to constantly innovate. I think that we've seen in the nonprofit sector, sometimes this isn't happening, right? Like we come up with a model, we're like, this is the model that works, it's out of school time, but there's not the same sort of entrepreneurial spirit. Really what that, when folks are innovating, ideally they should be innovating to better serve the needs of the community. And I've never seen a time period where the needs of the community are changing so rapidly. And so we've adapted both our in-school programs and our out-of-school programs to meet the needs of our young people. We have a fellowship program, for example, that is for 18 to 24-year-olds. We developed that program for them because these kids would finish our classes and finish coming to Open Lab and sort of quote unquote age out. And they came to us and said, what next? What do I do now with all of my desire to create a life as an artist? how do I do that? And because we are a team of artists, we had some skin in the game and said, you know, all these artists have attempted to figure that out. And so we developed a 9-month intensive professional, personal, and artistic development program for young people, where they not only get to go through a rigorous training and meeting artists, but at the end, they get a stipend to launch their endeavor, their pursuit. So I'll give you one other example. The music industry is no stranger to misogyny. When we look at women and their role in the industry, they don't have a lot of agency and they don't have a lot of power. They don't own labels. They aren't in management roles at the same level as men. And so this is a problem, right? And Youth on Record and flowbots.org was, you know, very much feel like we have our finger on the pulse of social justice issues, right? And really work to kind of eradicate the systems that are causing these issues. That said, in our own organization, we're getting the data, and we were like, my Lord, in all of our out-of-school time programs, it was predominantly young men. The good news about that, and young men of color, which is great on the level of, for the most part, young men of color who are teenagers don't participate in out-of-school time programs, right? So we were like, okay, that's different. Like, it's so great that they're all here. But our own programming, for whatever reason, had this sort of like music, recording, engineering stigma that it's not for women. So we had to adapt, and that's when we started our program called Fempowered, where young women get to learn from women in the music industry and have that sort of modeling and have that safe space. So I bring that up to say our programs now are in school and out of school. Our job is to continually keep our finger on the pulse, to listen to our young people and really adapt our programming to meet their needs. So if you ask us in 2 years from now, there's going to be some things that are the same, and there's going to be some newness. We're one of the only nonprofits I know that essentially has a research and development arm, and that's what Stefan runs, and I'm very much a part of that, where we're constantly innovating as a nonprofit.
Well, fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing your programs and the fantastic work that you guys are doing. Stefan, I wanted to ask you something. You were recently announced as the new music ambassador for the state of Colorado by Governor Polis. And this was, I believe, around March when all the shutdowns happened. Can you tell us a little bit about that and your role as the new music ambassador for the state of Colorado?
Absolutely, yeah. So the day that the announcement was supposed to be made at the Capitol was the first day of the shutdown. I was calling friends and family. I'm like, oh, it's not happening. It's no. Like, everything is, and I think in some ways that kind of like accurately kind of encapsulates a little bit of like my tenure thus far as the Colorado Music Ambassador, where it's just required a lot of flexibility. A lot of the ideas, one of the things that right now, I'm only the second Colorado statewide music ambassador that's been named. And there's a real advantage in that as far as like we get to determine what our role is. With each tenure thus far, you kind of present like, oh, well, here's what I would do with this. We had an idea, we had all these different plans pre-COVID about what my role would be. Post-COVID, it's been very, very different. In many of the ways, especially like after George Floyd's murder, I was helping make sure that the concerts and the protests that involved music were done safely. I was helping like connect different resources with sound and like helping like kind of set up, like a friend of mine went through and like set up X's down in Civic Center Park so people could stand at a social distance and still participate. Like keeping track and hearing what people were doing and helping like make all that be safe was one of the things that I was participating in. Also, I've been part of a project where we're trying to create socially distant shows, particularly for communities where music almost never comes. So we just did a show at a Royal Village, which is like a transitory housing for people who are going from homelessness into other types of lives or experiencing other types of destabilizing conditions and needing additional support with their housing. In that situation, what we did is like we organized to be able to have a show where the bands are playing in the courtyard and the majority of the residents are able to watch the shows from their own apartments. And those who aren't able to watch it from their own apartments can still see the live stream of the show that's being like piped in. And like kind of doing all these things, we're trying to look at different ways that we can use music as a resource to connect people in a time where the rhetoric is nothing but division. I feel like these kind of things, these kind of opportunities, and then highlighting the musical resources across the state of Colorado are also one of my priorities. So there's going to be a lot of programs and showcases coming forward, specifically where I'm going to be reaching out to my connections, not just in Denver and Boulder, but like all throughout Colorado, to kind of be able to highlight all of this musical richness that we have, and an opportunity to also help highlight to Coloradans like how much is actually bringing us together and how much we actually have here. And yeah, so it's been amazing. The pivot that had to happen with COVID is actually a welcome one. I feel like as musicians, it's one of the reasons I think YOR Record actually employs musicians almost entirely, is because in general, like for all these other things that we have, we also are flexible and we can adjust. And right now, this time, that's what's being required of all of us. And so, this is the time for us to improvise and make something beautiful happen. So like, we're just going to lean into the jazz of the moment. And I feel like as the ambassador, it's not necessarily an opportunity for me to highlight myself, but to use this as an opportunity to highlight all these other brilliant people who do the same.
So I was planning on coming to that event that was happening, that Governor Polis was going to announce you. And yes, I received the email at 10 or 10:30 p.m. the evening before that it was canceled. Yes, so it was literally on the first day of shutdown. I do remember. And this brings, it's a segue into my next question for you, Jamie. Obviously, the COVID pandemic has affected all different industries, all different organizations. Can you please talk to us about how this has affected Youth on Record and what Youth on Record is doing to deal with this situation?
Yeah. Obviously, it was, unexpected and unanticipated. Youth on Record, we were all at a CBCA, Colorado Business Committee for the Arts award luncheon, and we were winning an award. And there were about 900 arts professionals in the room and arts colleagues and friends. And as we were there, I got this really deep feeling. I think this was March 10th. I got a really deep feeling that, wow, this is all about to change. And I think that was the day that the NFL announced that they would be shutting down for the season. The next day, this team, like they do so well because they are artists, they're entrepreneurs, they're activists, and they're nonprofit folks. Nonprofit folks are gritty and know how to work with limited resources. We immediately got to work to shut down Youth on Record before the school districts even did, which was a little bit of a risk for us, but that's where I was getting some feedback from folks that people needed to hear from us. And I didn't realize until that moment, and it's still surprising to me, or I should say, I feel really humbled by the fact that we had other community organizations who needed to hear from us that we were going to make that move. And that is, that's not a responsibility we took lightly. So we were very thoughtful about how we were going to shut down, how we were going to let people know all of our safety procedures. And I realized in that moment that people look to us as an example or as someone to lead through difficult times. And so we shut down earlier than most, definitely earlier than Performing Arts Complex did and a lot of arts organizations. Once we did that, we saw people doing that as well. That's not 100% because of us. I mean, look, we followed the NBA, to be honest. The moment I saw American sports shutting down, I was like, oh, this is serious, because we all know how much Americans love their professional sports. So we followed that. What I've learned during this time is multifaceted. One, keeping your team cared for in a virtual setting is challenging and doable, but we really had to take we take a trauma-informed approach in our classrooms, and we took that with our team. This isn't a team who was just opting to work from home because like we all were missing our PJs. We were all asked to work from home because we were in the middle of a global crisis, and asking people to show up and be their best and be innovative while everybody was terrified in the beginning and disoriented, that's a challenge. And so I've learned a lot about myself and human beings and running a team when there's a crisis. I've also, it gave us a real opportunity to assess what this might look like for the long term. And so we had to really start to look at technology and how were we, immediately we started going, how are we going to reach our kids? How are we going to get to them? So I always say that Youth on Record doesn't take the summers off, because we don't. We teach in the schools and we work all summer, and we spent the summer coming up with what our in-person and virtual programming would be. We did start in-person programming in small cohorts as safely as possible, while at the same time offering virtual programming. There's so many lessons learned here, but one thing I will say is this. I have followed a principle that I actually learned in a yoga class about expanding and getting bigger when you're feeling unstable. You know, when you're out of balance physically, the reaction is to get smaller. But if you actually take a deep breath and you expand, you stabilize. I use that as a business principle. And Youth on Record is a business. We're in the business of empowering young people. So during this time, we did not contract. It was really important to me that we expanded. We expanded the way we think about our programs. We expanded our team. We expanded our resources. So while people were laying off and furloughing and getting afraid, and we were afraid too, but we had to push past that and say, actually right now calls for bravery and boldness and to get bigger and to expand. And so that's what we've done. I mean, our team has grown. We hire, everybody kept their jobs, including all of our contractors. Not a single musician was laid off who works for Youth on Record. We kept all of our programs going. We added additional programs. We have since hired 3 new people. Our team is expanding. Our funding is expanding. And I say that with a sensitivity of understanding that a lot of people are losing a lot of things right now. The creative economy in Colorado has lost thus far $1.4 billion.
Yes.
And 29,000 people are out of work in the creative economy alone. So the sensitivity I bring to this is this. I hear that, I see that, and I immediately think of building a company where these folks can work. Where during coronavirus, I want to create jobs for artists. I want to create work for artists. I want to create work for creatives, and work that is addressing the challenges of our community. And so if I can create an organization and build an organization, expand an organization where folks can come and work for us, that's my job in this moment. And by work for us, I mean work on behalf of the community. So the artists I know who are still employed are artists who are serving their communities right now. And I think that that tells us something. Yeah. That tells us about the future direction of music and where it actually needs to go to be sustainable.
Great. Yeah, hopefully people realize that music can save our communities, because it seems like that kind of grassroots effort is happening from what I'm seeing with local musicians that are helping keep some of our venues alive right now as best as possible.
That's right.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. Stefan, my next question is for you. With the country being in flux right now and all the tensions being high, what has Youth on Record done to speak to the moment? How have you listened? How have you followed? And how have you led the way with what we're facing currently in the landscape of our country?
Yeah. I think for everybody, this has been a very humbling moment where so many of the things that we believe to be functioning, we now see at their core are not, from our education system to the music industry, to even like, we could probably say, even like the way that our elections are working, right? Everything is being like kind of called into question, and like we're looking and seeing how it works. So I think for like, just like anybody else, we've been like really trying to take stock of like, how do we do what we say that we're doing in this context. So one of the things that we did is like, as like we're largely working with students in school. And so in the middle of spring semester, we went from seeing our students and being able to tell them that we love them on a daily basis to instantaneously the next week switching to remote lessons. One of the biggest adjustments for us was just realizing like, hey, all of us teaching artists, don't worry about your curriculum right now. This is the time to really like touch base with your students and ask them how they're doing. Connect with them, make sure that they have the resources that they need, make sure that like, you get to be kind of like a trusted connection between them and the school. Make sure that you're reaching out to the parents at this time and seeing what they need. There was a very real opportunity to kind of have the relationship with the students and the schools that we've always wanted to. So that was a real opportunity in that moment that has actually been a good thing and a trend that we're able to continue with. Because before, when everything was functioning as it was supposed to, we were too busy. The parents were too busy to have that kind of relationship. So I mean, that kind of thing, like trying to adjust all of our content and everything to make sure that care is showing up for our students in crisis. Because like any of the trauma that they experienced before was not being finished. Any of the alienation that they were feeling before, the oppression they were feeling before, none of that stuff was dropping. Everything was being ratcheted up for them. And adults, we didn't have the answers either. Like, there was nowhere that they could go for the answers. So creating a safe place for them was one of the like, biggest adjustments that we made. Jamie actually shared a lot of the ways in which I feel like as an organization, especially with her leadership that we led, as far as like, okay, well, if our teaching artists are taking care of the students, how are we taking care of the teaching artists? How are we making sure that this resource that is Youth on Watch stays for them and for the other musicians? Like, so like, that had to all have to go like, how do we make connections and care for them?
All right. Wonderful. Thank you. Well, I really appreciate you guys being here with me today and engaging in this fantastic conversation. Jamie, can you please let the audience know how can people donate to Youth on Record to support your programs and the wonderful work that you guys are doing?
Yeah, well, we are so grateful for, any contribution, and we believe that anyone can be a philanthropist. So it's, from $25 and beyond, from $10, every dollar really matters right now. So folks can donate to us on our webpage. There's multiple places to donate on our webpage. It's, pretty much on every single page. One way we would love to encourage folks to get involved, of course, being, at this conference and being just involved in the conversation actually helps us. And then, folks who want to dig a little bit deeper can sign up for our mailing list, and we'll let you know about the various events that we have going on. We're doing an event in partnership with the Kennedy Center called Founding Our Futures. And really, it's an artistic declaration for what's possible. It's right after the election. And it's really important to us to be able to amplify artist voices and youth voices about what's possible no matter the outcome of that election. So there's multiple ways to get involved there. Folks are, if you want more information, you can reach out to us on the website and follow our social media. We keep up with everything. We will let you know everything we're doing, student success stories, struggles that we're having. After George Floyd was killed, like so many people, we put out a statement, but we actually put out an action plan for folks about how we're asking you to value, honor, engage with, and defend Black youth. And it gives you some actionable things you can do there. listening to their music, advocating for schools where your children don't go, right? It's okay that your kids go to a really good school, but if a school another zip code down from you is not meeting the needs of young people, can you engage with that school? You know, like, we have things for parents to do that you could do in your own communities that actually support us. So there's ways to donate to Youth on Record. There's also ways to show up in your community that you may not even realize is supporting us, but it's supporting us, because when you, like I said, honor, value, engage with, and defend BIPOC youth and marginalized young people, by that nature, you're supporting our work. And of course, if you're able to give directly to us, we are so grateful for that, because again, we're expanding when the world's contracting. And the reason we're expanding is because the need's expanding. And so any support we get from you, both monetarily and how you show up in the world, really matters. And so I want to say thank you in advance to anybody who can support us financially, and then just show up by doing your work in the community.
And also, I'd like to add that we do have, separate from the statewide music ambassador, like, we have our own music ambassador program.
Oh, yes.
In which, like, local musicians of any size, like, the way that we are built is music facing. So we know that of any size, if you decide, like, you can get on our website, sign up for the program. There's all these different ways to be involved. But, like, we are working with bands to find ways to support this organization through their music, through their shows, or whatever. So, like, we do know, like, shows aren't happening in a traditional sense or any of those things, but that's another way that people can be involved, particularly musicians. And it's one of our proudest things to be able to say that, like, X amount of our fundraising comes from the local musicians here in Colorado.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, just last weekend, we had a local musician do a 24-hour live stream show and raise over $11,000 for us. This was not... you know, this is a local incredible band. So yes, thank you for mentioning that, Steph. And musicians who want to get involved directly to teach with us and to work for us should contact us on the website, because we've got trainings that we can take you through and start to plug you in various ways. If you are an artist right now and you're wondering, what am I going to do with myself and my time now? Contact us. Contact Youth on Record. We will find a way to get you plugged in. We are fueled by musicians, and if you're a musician hearing this, and the great thing about virtual is it's not limited anymore. So if you're a musician in, you know, Ohio watching, and you don't have a Youth on Record in your town is our town now, because our town is all virtual. So please contact us. Please contact us. We'll plug you in.
I left this off because I'm so bad about this, but, like, one of my projects as the music ambassador is this thing called Mic Class.
Yes.
We're training musicians to do enrichments in classrooms. Like, how do you go in and, like, play your songs for second graders, fifth graders, seniors in high school? Because, like, something that's special about Colorado is that musicians actually really care and want to be involved. And so, you know, the beautiful thing about that is if we set this up correctly, that's another way for musicians to be able to make their living outside of the industry as described. And the thing is, like, in this moment with COVID, that demand has not gone down. It's actually risen. So with Mic Class, it's a one-day workshop. And in this case, it would be a digital workshop where we train musicians on how to create their lesson plan, or I say set list, for these kind of enrichments. So, like, because, like, right now, I tell you, like, teachers are so ravenous for enrichments. Like, they would love to be able to have a skilled musician be able to come in and share their story and share their songs for 15 to 20 minutes, and to do so with skill for, like, all of their students. They're looking for ways to be engaged. So Mic Class is like a one-off workshop that we give at Youth on Record for free, to, like, get musicians ready for that. So, like, also in a point in time where certain types of gigs are drying up, we feel like these kind of community gigs are more necessary than ever.
Yeah.
All right, wonderful. Well, once again, I would like to thank Jamie Duffy and Stephen Brackett from Youth on Record for joining me today. Thank you guys so much for the wonderful that you're doing with music to make a difference in our communities. This is our belief with our organization, World Music Development, as well, that music has the power to make those differences. So thank you so much for being another champion in that field and doing what you're doing. Anything else that you would like to part us with today?
Well, thank you all for doing what you're doing. It's
Absolutely.
so important to provide this kind of platform and to be champions of this kind of discussion.
Yeah, echo that. Thank you so much. Thanks for having us. Thanks for giving us a platform to amplify our work. And thanks for all the great work you do. We will find a way to have that press conference again with Governor Polis.
Definitely.
Everybody's just gonna have to be a little patient.
Yep. I will be there when that happens again.
Yay.
Okay, guys, again.
Thank you so much for having us. We're super grateful.